All right, guys, we have the last episode of this season's Dana White's Contender Series. It's week 10. A lot of us have been dreading this day. At least I know I have been. It's nice to have that DWCS action take place towards the beginning of the week. It kind of just gets things rolling. And in this season's case, it's been very good to me. It's been a very profitable season. And I think that we've seen some very exciting fights. I took a very hard L last Tuesday, so I'm hungrier than ever, and we have 6 fights to pick at from on this episode. But I did have a 3-unit play on Mark Vologden last week, and you guys can imagine what I looked like watching that fight. I think that that was one of the most entertaining fights that I've ever seen, period. We're not talking just DWCS. When I see people referring to the fight being one of the most exciting fights that we've seen on the show, I mean, I strongly disagree. I think that that was one of the most exciting fights that I've ever seen. I'm talking boxing, MMA, any type of combat sport you could think of. That fight was ridiculous. Okay, I have that right up there with fights like Roy McDonald and Robbie Lawler. I mean, it was crazy. Both fighters completely forgot to bring their defense to the cage. And in Mark Vologden's case, I was a little bit more upset to see that, because I thought that that was a very winnable fight for him. And I like him a lot. He's going to have to make that move down to the flyweight division. I mean, that's where his frame fits in much better. But that was such a winnable fight. And then in the third round, he just continues to headhunt instead of playing it a little bit more defensively. I thought he should have been pumping the jab and just been a little bit more worried about stuff in the takedown, which that last takedown at the end of the fight was the difference in it. But I mean, what an exciting fight. I would love to sit here and tell you guys that, I enjoyed the fight so much that it didn't really matter that I took an L there, but actually it was the complete opposite. I was pretty devastated as I was just so emotionally invested in that fight, and I had some big money on Vologden, and as he just came up short. That would hurt. All right, guys. So I'm hungry. And like I said, though, this season has been very good to me. That we've been very profitable throughout this season, and I'm looking to go out with a bang here. And I very likely am going to have 2 plays officially locked in. I'm going to make a decision here within the next hour, but I already have one target that I like quite a bit. So if you guys want my official targets for this card, I will give you a special offer. I'll conjoin that with this upcoming UFC Vancouver event, and I'll combine those together. Shoot me an email, DM me on social media if you're interested in that. I think it's going to be a very big week for us. If you guys can all smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and go follow me on social media. It's always highly appreciated, so thank you for any kind of support. And with that, we'll jump over to the first fight. Let's get into this thing. So about a year ago, Wes Schultz had an opportunity on DWCS to get that UFC contract, and he came up short against Mansour Abdul Malik, who has really made some noise inside the octagon already since being signed. And I think that we can all agree that MAM is actually a legitimate up-and-coming fighter, a legitimate prospect. He's a solid talent. So, that loss wasn't the worst look. If you guys remember, he got finished up in the second round, and Schultz actually had some moments in time in that fight where he showcased that he is somewhat competent with his grappling. I would say he's taken on this fighter here, the Italian Mario Mingaj, who, to me, if I'm cutting to the chase, seems to be a real one-trick pony. This is a fighter that's lacking quite a bit as far as his full arsenal goes. He keeps relying on pulling off this triangle choke off his back, and I think that is, well, first off, we know this for a fact that it's actually one of the least likely submissions that we see take place in the UFC, okay? It's probably right behind like a Gogo Plata or something like that, but you hardly see triangle chokes off your back work in the UFC these days. I mean, they're just so easily defendable. And if that's your game plan, to go out there and pull off that move, okay, your back's up against the wall right off the rip. He's 7-0, but he's been fighting over there in Cage Warriors against very low-level talent. Even one of the more recent victories he had, I was familiar with the opponent, and Zura Zernadze, who represents Greece. And I mean, that fighter, okay, yeah, he pulled off the sub in just 1 minute and 50 seconds. If you look at it like that, you may say, oh, well, he ran through him. You go pull the tape up. That fight's on YouTube. I mean, he gets taken down so easily. You see that his striking is not there as well. But the main thing that concerns me is the lack of wrestling. Okay, he gets taken down with ease. In some of these fights, he welcomes the takedown. He kind of almost pulls guard as you go in to take him down. But he's getting taken down by very low-level fighters that I know are a step below a Wes Schultz, who actually has a little bit of an American wrestling background. I think that Wes will be able to get this fight down when he wants to. And I actually think that Mingaj is going to basically welcome it. I think that he has that much confidence in his guard. And I'll give him credit. I will say that his guard, it's decent. Okay. He does kind of know what he's doing. And I wouldn't be shocked if he pulled some kind of reversal and got on top position, but I haven't really seen any of that from him, even against these low level fighters. Okay. It's not even like he really hunts for that. He literally looks to lock in that triangle. And I just think that Schultz will be, he'll be on par to avoid that sub. And I think that Schultz actually has some damaging ground and pound. And I think that I could possibly see Schultz passing guard and getting into a dominant position and finishing this fight via ground and pound. I think that that's a very likely scenario. Now, if he doesn't get that kind of stoppage in this fight, if he doesn't get caught in that triangle choke, and the more sweaty they get and the more exhausted they get as this fight goes to the later rounds, I think that it will still benefit Schultz a lot. I think he'll be the fighter that's rinsing and repeating the takedowns and getting in top position and still scoring points. On the feet, I don't expect this fight to take place on the feet that much, but yeah, Wes Schultz has pretty atrocious striking as well. He's very unorthodox and crazy. He'll throw spinning attacks and all that. But Mario is, you could say he's kind of light on his feet and throws a little bit more straight strikes, but it's bad. Trust me when I tell you it's bad. He kind of has like a sparring type of striking, and I don't expect him to land anything damaging. And I don't expect this fight to take place on the feet that long. I think that both these fighters are gonna lock up. They're gonna welcome that type of fight, and you're gonna see the grappling exchanges. And quite simply, if Mingaj is gonna win this fight, I think that it's very likely that he'll have to pull off that triangle choke. Okay, that's how limited he is as a fighter, and I'm not gonna bank on that. I like Schultz to go out here and get the job done, and I'm actually gonna pick in typical fashion. You guys know I like to call my finishes, and Schultz has been more of a submission threat. If you look at the bulk amount of his victories, I think he has 7 wins. 4 of them maybe come by sub, 2 come by TKO. But there was one fight where I saw him landing some pretty nasty ground and pound. Take it for what you will, was against a lower level fighter. But I do believe that Mingaj is going to give him some opportunities to do that. And I'm going to say he gets a TKO stoppage in the second round or in the third round. I think that when Mingaj doesn't pull off that triangle choke, I think that he'll start to unfold and he'll break down a little bit, and Schultz will have an opportunity to finish him. Now, he may hurt him and then sink in a rear naked choke. So this is one of those types of fights where you could easily see a submission take place as well as he starts to land ground and pound, and then the submission opens up. Similarly to what we just saw at UFC Rio, if you guys remember that Mesquita fight where she took on Alexeva and was just beating her down for rounds. And I'm sure some of you guys were watching that fight at the edge of your seat if you had her to win that fight via sub, or if you really went to get some good odds and you took her to win that fight via KO/TKO. It was so close, and then eventually she sinks in that choke in the second round. But this could be one of those kind of fights. I don't know if it will be that dominant, but it could play out in a similar fashion. This one should be a little wild here in the heavyweight division. Azamat Nuftillaev takes on Jovan Leka, and it's quite funny as I've been paying attention to this matchup for the last couple days as I've been diving into the tape and all that. If you guys have been paying attention, Tapology actually just removed a couple of the victories that Azamat had, as now he has 13 victories where recently he had 17, and they were due to just being unqualified for their legitimacy. And if you notice, Nuftillaev, the beginning of his record, his resume is extremely padded. Okay, he's fighting all kinds of fighters that are making their pro debuts or just have atrocious records. It almost looks similar to Khabib Nurmagomedov's beginning of his career. And I say that joking around for all you Khabib fans. Don't take it personal. But this dude, Nuftillaev, I really was not impressed with his tape. He's fun to watch. He's going to bring the action specifically in the first round, but he is a very limited fighter, and he's already 31. He's about to be 32. So I don't know how much room for development he has. While on the other hand, as you take a look at Leka hitting the pads here, this is a fighter that's just 23 years old and has shown some signs of being or having decent boxing skills. I think that there's some potential here, specifically based off his age. He has time to sharpen some things up. He's a big dude and he moves decent. And where I see Leka having a major advantage in this fight is as it progresses, I definitely think that he'll get the better of the fight, specifically on the feet. If he just pumps that jab, he's going to be landing at will. The strikes of Azamat are so telegraphed, right? I like to throw out that phrase, not like I made it up. Of course, you guys hear, the commentating team say it once in a while, but, he throws those strikes out from east and west. I don't even know if that's the right way to describe his striking. Okay, this dude is just so stiff. The way his elbows are locked as he's throwing these sledgehammers, and maybe there's some decent power on them, but they're so telegraphed. And I would lean more towards the side of the power really not being there, because if you don't have proper technique, I mean, it's the heavyweight division, but still, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked even if he has some success landing some strikes. If it's not going to be anything that's really going to phase Leka too much. If you watch how Azamat fights, he's going to burst out the gates and he'll show some signs where for a second you're watching him and you're like, oh, he kind of knows what he's doing. You'll see him take a back or something like that. And you're like, oh, he has decent grappling, right? He's big. He can get on top and he can hold position. No, he doesn't. Even when he's in a dominant position, he gives it up. He'll fall off the back. And then as the fight progresses, that's where you really start to see him look bad. Like if you pull up this fight that's on YouTube here against Slim Trabelsi, who I believe is, I think he was fighting out of Morocco. I forget exactly where, or maybe he was Tunisian. But in that fight, you saw as the fight progressed, you really saw Azamat start to look worse and worse. And again, all these victories that you're looking at here, I mean, these are low level victories. And even though he's prevailed in a lot of these fights, he goes through a lot of hectic scenarios. He's put in danger, and you see the flaws in his game. That's kind of how I look at him. Leka, without a doubt, is not a fully polished product. He's 10-2. He hasn't been battling the highest level of competition, as to be expected as well. But this is a fighter. When you see him having success, he's letting his hands go, and he's throwing these nice straight shots. And I've seen him bloody some dudes up and damage them. And I'm going to say that he's able to stuff the takedowns. And at the very least, if he gets taken down early on, if he could just weather the storm, as soon as the second round kicks off, he'll be right in control of it once again. And you could probably see Azamat start to gas out and have little to no success getting takedowns. So I really haven't been impressed with what I've seen from Nuftillaev. I'm not crazy about the product that Leka is right now. He's not a fully polished product, but he, to me, seems to be the better fighter here. And another thing, too, I'll say this real quick before we get to the odds, is that Azamat, he has battled against smaller fighters, right? You pull up some of his tape. He's in there. He's been there with some decent-sized guys, but there's a good amount of fights where he's battling these smaller guys, and you still see him going at it, fighting tooth and nail to get a W. And meanwhile, you got this young fighter, Leka, who's going to give him a little bit of a taste of his own medicine. He's going to be big in there. He's a big dude as well. So I think that could get in the head of Nuftillaev, and I'm going to take the Serbian here and Jovan Leka to get the job done. And we take a look at the odds right now, where this is a fight that is capped very closely. Leka has been the slight underdog leading up to this fight, and I'm kind of surprised. I really am. I'm kind of surprised to see the odds where they're at, and I'm just curious why anybody would have any kind of faith in Nuftillaev. I don't know. I mean, I guess people are expecting to see some developed skills and see him take this game to another level. I don't see it, though. Give me the Serbian to get a stoppage, to get a TKO stoppage in the second round. Now, to me, this should have been the main event of this episode. I think without a doubt, this is my most anticipated fight of the episode. And, as we move through the card and we get up to the main event, I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. But I really don't understand the placement of the fight that we have to end this season. All right, when you look at this fight, this is guaranteed action. Michael Oliveira and Victor Valenzuela, you take a look at their tape, you break it down. It's fun to watch. They bring the fight. This almost certainly is going to be a striker's delight. I think that they're going to clash on the feet, and I think we're very likely going to see a KO. All right, Oliveira, out of his 8 victories, I believe he has a KO. Yeah, he does. He has a KO in every single one except one. And the only fight he didn't get a KO was his most recent fight. And even in that fight against Aldo Pereira, he brought it and he landed some big strikes. Oliveira trains under a gym called KO Squad, which is coached by Rafael Cavalcante. If you guys remember him, he was a nasty striker, a nasty knockout artist. He used to fight in Strikeforce, and eventually he did work his way into the UFC when the UFC bought Strikeforce up. But he was always a fun fighter to watch. So I do kind of like some of the people that he's been training with and learning from. And I think that he's an absolute raw talent. He's a specimen. You take a look at his physique. I mean, this is a real athlete. And what I like about him is specifically what we saw from him in his last fight, right? This is, or no, not even just his last fight, actually. You run it back to his second to most recent victory over Dalis Gama, which, you take that victory for what you will. It wasn't the highest level of opponent, but he was in complete control from the onset. There was a couple strikes landed on him as his striking defense isn't the best, but he was marching Gama down and he never slowed down. He was very methodical all throughout that fight, and he was calculated as he eventually got that third round stoppage with just a couple seconds left. And I like that because he kind of checks off that box that he's not going to flake out on you late in a fight. I mean, really, the more that fight picked up, you saw that he was just locked in, waiting to find his finish. As I said, though, he does need to sharpen up his striking defense because I have seen him touched up a little bit. The chin looks granite. I mean, this is a young stallion. He's probably going to be able to walk through a lot of damage. But I'll tell you what, you don't want to play that game too much because eventually it can catch up to you. And it's funny because you could say the same exact thing for his opponent here, Victor Valenzuela, who definitely has some striking defensive issues, okay? And he's gotten away with it. He's eaten a lot of shots. I've seen him dropped. If you pull up his most recent fight where he defeated Bruce Whitehead, as soon as that fight kicked off, we saw him kind of get dropped a little bit there. He ate a strike, and he got back up, and then he went right back to work and dismantled Whitehead and eventually put him completely unconscious with the knee. It was pretty nasty. That dude Whitehead was sleeping, and but you play that game, and if you have those striking defensive issues, now you're locked in there with a fighter like Oliveira. That could be a problem. Okay, you can be put out. I think without a doubt you can be put out. You take a look at his other 3 losses. He was submitted once. He was KO'd once before. And his other victory, I believe, was a DQ on him for an illegal head kick. Yeah, that was on his part. And that was against Thomas Powell, very low-level fighter. But it was a DQ. So take that for what you will. But he has been KO'd in sub before. He's a very aggressive fighter. He's a bit of a bull, too. Okay, you talk about the Oliveira being a specimen and whatnot. I think that this dude, he does bring in some physical traits. But at the end of the day, I think that Oliveira is the side to be on, and I think he gets the KO. But I'll tell you right now, I would not be shocked if Oliveira gets a little too overly confident with some success and runs into a counter. I don't want to completely overlook the power that Valenzuela has. And, I'm going to bring this up as well. So out of his 12 victories, he does have 6 KOs. So half of his victories are coming by way of stoppage there. 4 decisions, 2 submissions, but his strength is the fight-ending power that he has, and he showcases it's not just in his hands. All right, he'll mix in elbows and knees and all that. So I kind of like what Valenzuela brings to the table, but he's got a full plate in front of him. Now, basically what we have seen is that Oliveira opened up around a -200, and we've seen that action coming in on him, where he's now on average right around a -250. So it's a decently steep line, in my opinion, just based off the fact that this is going to be a fight where they throw down and someone's going to get KO'd, and could be Oliveira. I think it's much more likely Oliveira is the fighter landing the KO, but is it worth tagging him on the -250? This is going to be one of those fights, I'm telling you right now, where, I tell you, I kind of like the value on the dog a little bit more so. I feel like that's the more intelligent answer, to be honest. I mean, if you can catch Valenzuela all the way up as like a +208, I think that is the value side. Even if you're catching him as like a +190, Valenzuela also may get ran through, and then you guys will be disappointed in me for saying that, as you guys are going to feel like, it was a guarantee, it was a layup to take Oliveira. This is going to be one of those types of fights. I'm telling you guys right now, that this game, it's a game of inches, and as these guys are slugging it out, someone's going to get hurt. So just for fun, I'm going to throw some bold thoughts out there as we jump into this segment. I'm going to say that Marwan Rahiki ends up being one of the most successful fighters to come out of this season. I'm going to throw that out there. I really like what I see from this kid. Obviously, specifically with his striking. His striking is his main strength. He's taken on Ananias Mulumba here, who is also a very green fighter and does show some promise. But Rahiki is the fighter, to me, that shows to have way more potential. If Rahiki figures out the whole grappling thing, specifically his takedown defense and his get-up game, this is a fighter that's going to be a problem. And the main thing is that he's just 23 years old. He's extremely young. His striking, I believe right now, his striking can hang with many in this division. In the UFC, I think that he can go toe-to-toe with fighters on the UFC roster. Okay, I'm not saying he can go in there and battle with the best of them, but he has legitimate striking. And imagine him when he's 28, 29 years old. This is a fighter that could be throwing down in the octagon for some time. He's Moroccan, but he has been fighting out of Australia. He's been wreaking havoc over there. He's 6-0. You break down the tape, though, you see how he's doing it. And he's going out there and he's just working dudes. And another thing that I like from him is that we've seen some of his opponents just kind of desperately try to take him down, and he'll kind of reverse them, or he'll get in a dominant position. And his ground and pound, it kind of reminds me, I know some of you guys are probably getting annoyed. I'm getting a little too high in him here, but it's similar. I'm using it for comparison's sake. It's like an Anderson Silva type of ground and pound where he's pretty accurate with his ground and pound, man. He's kind of picking his shots and then just starting to unload as he hits you right where he wants to hit you. So, I mean, this is a fighter that has a lot of promise. I think that he's the real deal, but this is the catch right here. This is the catch. The fact that he is so new to MMA, he's only been training MMA for a couple years. If he were to get exposed and taken advantage of, it could be fighting against a fighter that's catching him at the right time. And, he's a little bit of a step up in competition compared to anything that Rahiki has fought, and can potentially get takedowns and lay him flat on his back. I mean, that's the real recipe. And when you look at Mulumba, he has his own striking abilities, but it's not on the same level as a Rahiki, in my opinion. I think that it's unorthodox, and he's kind of explosive with the way he throws his strikes, but I think that tit for tat, I mean, he'll be completely out-comboed, but we have seen him change levels and look to get takedowns before. And a lot of his fights take place over in Africa against lower-level competition. He's just 27 years old, and I don't think that he is the fighter that's going to catch Rahiki right now and be able to expose him. And you rewind a couple fights ago, I mean, he just got caught in a guillotine choke. He shows to have his own issues. He's green, and I wouldn't be shocked if he makes a mistake trying to force a takedown if he starts to feel desperate as he's being picked apart and maybe he gets caught in a sub. I mean, this is a very green fighter as well. Both these fighters are legitimate prospects. I just think that Rahiki is the fighter you're going to want to keep an eye on, and I think that he gets the job done. And you guys know I like to call my finishes for these DWCS fights, and I've been sitting here raving about Rahiki, but I'm going to pull a little bit of a maneuver on you guys, and I'm going to call Rahiki to win a dominant decision here. I'm going to say he throws out a lot of tricks and he showcases his striking abilities, but I'm going to say that Mulumba makes it to the final bell. I'm going to call that. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Rahiki can catch that KO, and I obviously want to call a KO for fun here, but I got to go with my gut. I think this fight goes to the final bell. I think that it's fun, it's action-packed, but I'm going to say Rahiki doesn't get him out of there. You take a look here at the money line where Rahiki opened up as a -220, and we see action coming in on him as he's now a -270. So people are obviously pulling up the tape, and they're seeing that this dude moves in a nasty way in the feed. He switches stances, and he should be out well ahead in a striking match. And the only way he loses this fight is if he gets caught, if he runs into a strike, or if he completely gets exposed down on the mat. And you guys also know the recipe for this show pushes the excitement, pushes the striking. So it even almost takes away from Mulumba just laying and praying, holding him down. I mean, he would really have to go to work down there as well. And I think a lot of things point towards Rahiki getting the job done here. I like this kid. At 135, Juan Díaz takes on Juan Kwon. Two fighters with the same name, just spelt differently. These fighters have an interesting contrast in fighting styles, I would say. Juan Kwon is very entertaining. Okay, he has very technical striking. He's very fun to watch. He brings the fight. I really enjoyed breaking down tape on him. And some of you guys are probably familiar with him already, as he is very battle tested over in 1FC. I believe he had like 14 fights over there. Juan Díaz, who is the current Lux champion, he represents Peru. This is a fighter that I truly believe is not that exciting to watch. Okay, I don't think he's a bad fighter, but I don't think that he's that exciting. I think he's more of a decisionator, and I'm interested to see how they're going to clash with them both having those very different type of styles. What I'm thinking is going to happen is that Kwon is going to shoot out the gates like he typically does. He'll have that nice high, tight guard, and he'll look to be offensive. I think he's going to look to land. I think that he will have a lot of success landing, but I do worry a little bit about him being countered with something, because as far as durability goes, I think that Díaz is the much more durable fighter, at least from what we've seen from him. Okay, I do. We've seen Kwon finished a couple times. He's been KO'd twice. I believe both of them were due to body shots, and he's very tall and lean. I believe he was finished twice to the body. I know as of recently he was, and he comes into this fight off of an L, right? That was his most recent fight over and won. And it was against Fabricio de Andrade. The other loss was a liver kick. Okay, besides that, he was subbed twice before. Back in the day, got caught in a heel hook and a rear naked choke. So he shows to be more vulnerable being finished in his fights, and that has a lot to do with how offensive he is. But I also think it has a little bit to do with his durability. I think that there's a little something there as well. Díaz, on the other hand, I think this is going to be a fighter that could really take some damage. That's kind of what I get from him when I watch tape, and just kind of putting some puzzle pieces together. A tough Peruvian dude that I think that will be there. I don't think this is a fighter that's just going to get steamrolled. But even if he doesn't get finished in this fight, how is it going to look on the scorecards if we don't see a finish at all? Let's say we don't see a finish. I think that it very well, if we were to know this fight's going to go to a decision, I feel a lot more confident that Kwon would be the victor there, because his takedown defense has looked pretty sharp as of recently as well. He really knows how to post up against the cage and stuff takedowns, and I don't think it's going to be easy to get him down. I don't think that Díaz is going to have too much success there. If we were to see a fighter have success with the grappling, I'll put that little feather in Díaz's cap there as a little advantage. He's been active in the grappling world, and we have seen him mix in some takedowns and have success down in the mat, kind of boringly controlling a position. And this show doesn't favor that, so we'll see how that plays out. All in all, I like being on Kwon's side here. I do. You have the X factor of him maybe landing a real damaging shot and shaking things up and getting a stoppage. But even if that doesn't happen, you should feel comfortable going to the judges' scorecards here. I think I could say that pretty safely. And Díaz, you take a look here. Out of his 14 victories, 7 of his 14 victories have gone to a decision. And you take a look at his more recent victories, you see a lot of unanimous decisions going on. Okay, a lot of them. So, this is a bit of a step up in competition to an extent as well. I'm going to say he doesn't find that finish and Kwon gets the job done. I'm going to say that Kwon wins this fight via decision. I'm going to pump the brakes on calling another finish, as I like to do, and I'm going to stick to my gut here and say this makes it to the final bell. Kwon opened up over here right around a minus 140. We saw him up as a minus 127 not too long ago, and we're starting to see a lot of action come in on him actually rapidly leading up to this fight, as he's now up towards a minus 170. So people feeling pretty confident in him. You see the action coming in on him. I like him to win this fight. I'm not crazy backing him with this line movement. I'll tell you that. I liked him, and I don't know if I liked him even where this line opened up as far as targeting him on a play. There's not a lot of confidence in the pick. I like what I see from him, but there's some things that are kind of holding me back on that. Certainly don't like siding with him with this line. I think this line's too high, and I feel that the value is on the dog here. I think that the value is on the dog. If you wanted to bet this fight right now, you target the dog. And that takes us to the headliner, where we have the return of Freddy Vidal. If you guys remember, a couple weeks back, he pulled off the last-second comeback as the underdog against Felipe Franco. Dana promised him another opportunity on this season. Here we go. He's taking on Levi Rodrigues. This is a young fighter who definitely shows flashes with his striking and his knockout ability. He goes in there and he flatlines dudes left and right. I think there's still a lot of question marks about his overall game. I'm very curious to see if this fight went to the later rounds, how he'll fare with a big fighter like Vidal, who should be coming into this fight obviously even in better shape than that last fight where he took that one on very short notice. I think that we will see a more prepared Vidal, and Vidal is kind of a gamer. Okay, he has a lot of holes in his overall game, but one thing that he seems to have is that he's a gamer. And in the very limited amount of action that Vidal has had, he has had, take it with a grain of salt, he's had success before landing strikes on the feet, but I think he's going to be outgunned here in a straight-up kickboxing match or a straight-up striking match, specifically early on, okay? When both fighters are fresh and they're throwing down, I think that Levi is going to be much more dangerous, and Vidal would be wise to really not engage in that too much. So if he is kind of striking it out with him, he should really have it in the back of his mind to play it a little bit safer, try to get this fight to go to the later rounds. Not that his cardio has looked the best, but you have to give him credit for the way that he pulled out that last fight. He showed to have a lot of heart. He should be he should look better in the later rounds than he even did in that fight, with him having more time to prep. And I think that that could be his advantage for this fight, to go to the later rounds, try to make things ugly in there, acting like he's engaging in a striking match, but to change levels and somehow get on top in a sloppy type of fight, and to get on top of Levi and maybe expose him there. I think that that is the potential hole in Levi's game, or the most glaring potential hole. It could be his ground game and his cardio. We haven't seen him tested there too much. You take a look, Vidal has these 4 professional fights, while he had about another 5 amateur bouts. On the other hand, Levi, he only has 5 professional fights, but he does have a good amount of amateur experience. He had a good amount of amateur bouts, even had a couple kickboxing and boxing matches, and his striking looks dangerous, man. It really does. From the limited amount of tape you could pull up on him, you'll see him occasionally go out there and just steamroll somebody. And I wouldn't say that his striking is extremely technical. He's not throwing these strikes like right down the pipe, but I do like the fact that we've seen him kind of unravel these combos where he's landing a knockout on his 4th and 5th strike in a combination. So he'll really bombard you with strikes, and he's still dangerous at the end of these combinations. And that's a good sign for a young fighter. And I think that he's very live to land something damaging. I've seen Vidal kind of tagged and wobbled before on the regional scene. He's pushed through it. Yeah, like I said, he's kind of that gamer. He has that heart. I'm really torn on who I want to pick here. I'm telling you guys right now, I'm going to make a decision with you guys right now, because I'm very, very torn. I've been back and forth. Levi, he had a little hiatus from the fight game for a little bit. He was gone for 2 years. He made a return about 5 months ago, and he's starting to pick things back up. And he trains over at Inside Muay Thai, which they've had some fighters come through this show into the UFC. When you think about like Gene Matsumoto, who I know he surrounds himself with him quite a bit. Obviously, they probably don't get too much working together. They're very different in stature, but just to bring that up, and I'm going to make a pick right now. We're going to pull up the odds for this fight, where you're going to see Vidal is the dog. And, I was very close to picking Vidal, right? This is the last pick of this season, and I was very close to picking Vidal. I think that it's likely that he can avoid being KO'd early and take this fight over later, and possibly expose Levi's grappling, and maybe we see him sink in some kind of choke late in this fight. But you know what, man? I got to pick Levi to win this fight. Not only does he have the X factor of being much more likely to land a knockout in this fight, specifically early. If he comes in and his cardio holds up, and he has the takedown defense to avoid just being exposed late in this fight, he should be up on the scorecards as well. He should be landing the damage, and I think it's more likely he gets the job done. And you take a look at the odds on him, when you're going to be seeing him right around a -155 or so. With me being so torn on this pick, it kind of points towards me not feeling there's a crazy amount of value. I am probably leaning towards the value being on the dog here. I think that this fight truly can go either way. I'm leaning towards Levi, and he may go out here and really shine and land a first round KO. It's another one of those types of fights, but if he doesn't, I think that Vidal is going to be live. I don't know if you have availability to target this fight on the live odds, depending on what's going on there, but give me Levi to get the job done. And I'm actually going to say he lands a first round KO. I think he finds the mark on Vidal, who does have suspect defense, and maybe we don't even get to see Vidal get that opportunity. He just gets steamrolled early. All right, guys, we'll scroll back down to the bottom of the card. We'll do some contract predictions here. We're once again looking at Mario Mingaj and Wes Schultz. And I'm going to say that Schultz gets a contract here. That's the fighter I'm leaning towards getting a contract. Now, if Mingaj pulls off the triangle choke, does he get a contract based off that? I wouldn't be shocked if Dana kind of notices that he's a little too green to be fighting in the UFC, and he could be really exposed there. I wouldn't be shocked, but let's say he pulls a triangle choke off. That's going to be interesting to see if he does get a contract. Like, let's say Schultz is on top of him, raining down ground and pound and exposing him a bit, and then he pulls off the choke. It'll be interesting to see that, but I think that Schultz has a solid opportunity to get signed here if he really opens up with the ground and pound and looks to put on a show. And he's wild on the feet too. Maybe he throws something out there to kick the fight off. And let's see. I'll say Schultz gets a contract. We bump up. I mean, listen, we bump up to this heavyweight matchup. You guys know that the heavyweight division is the roster is always very slim. So the UFC and Dana is always looking to sign somebody. I'm going to say that Leka gets the contract, and realistically, whoever wins that fight could get signed, as long as it doesn't look too brutal in the later rounds, and these fighters will bring it early on. We talked about the fact that Azamat starts off very strong, so if he has success in the first round, he could very likely get signed. He most likely would, and that's kind of how I look at that fight. But I lean towards Leka getting the job done and getting signed because that roster is so slim. Dana will take advantage of signing a young heavyweight fighter there. Michael Oliveira and Victor Valenzuela, I think for sure we're going to see a contract signing in that fight. No matter who wins that fight, whoever wins that fight is going to get a contract, and we potentially could see both fighters signed if we see an absolute war and the fight goes a little later on. All right, and then we're looking at Marwan, Rahiki, and Mulumba, which this is a fight I told you guys I like this fight a lot too. I like Rahiki. I think Rahiki is getting signed here. This kid is talented, and I think he gets signed. Juan, Kwon, and Juan Díaz. Juan, if he is the victor, he very well can be signed because Dana's going to like what he sees from him from his striking, and he's a fun fighter. He's going to bring it. If Díaz wins, we may not see him get signed. He may resort to his grappling, and the fight may slow down a bit, and we may not see him get signed. So you keep an eye on that. But if he is going to get signed, maybe Kwon exposes himself and he puts himself out there to be finished, and Díaz capitalizes on that, countering him with something, and he gets signed. But I'm leaning more towards Díaz not getting signed if he gets the job done. And that takes us to the main event. If Vidal comes through once again, I think that it is likely he gets signed just based off the fact that Dana gave him the second opportunity. He gave him this main event slot, so it kind of shows you what he thinks of him as far as connections being built or whatnot. Who knows? I know Vidal has spent a lot of time with Sarah Longo and all that, so maybe there's some connections through the coaching. But if Vidal shows up and gets the finish, he's going to get signed. That's 2 victories in a row. Levi, if he goes out there and gets that first round KO, he's going to get signed. And as I stated earlier, these upper weight classes, the rosters are a little bit more slim. This is a light heavyweight matchup here. And I very well can see Levi getting signed if he wins this fight, which it should be by him showcasing his dangerous striking ability. So I think in the main event, whoever wins that fight is very likely to get signed. I think that's how that fight's going to play out there. All right, guys, that's going to wrap this one up, and that's going to wrap up this season of DWCS. So I want to thank all of you guys that have been tuning in week to week. I really appreciate you guys a lot. Everyone that's been smashing the like button, subscribing to the channel, and showing any kind of love and support. I really appreciate you guys. Hopefully, I've been a service to you guys. Hopefully, I've helped you guys with some of these events. Like I said, I mean, we really had a lot of success on this season as a whole, right? Everything wasn't perfect. I know last week's episode wasn't a perfect one, but realistically, throughout the season, we've had a lot of success. And sometimes you guys can be a little harsh, man. If I'm not perfect with my picks, I know I didn't have the best event for UFC Rio. It was an off event for me, and I'm looking to bounce back in a major way for UFC Vancouver. If you guys look at my results long term, okay, I'm good at what I do. I know I'm not perfect all the time. It's tough to hop on the mic and hop in front of the camera every single week and just predict everything to a T. Okay, if you guys, if you want to try it, write down your picks for every event and see how you do year to year. Keep track and see if you have any tough times or tough little spurts for a month or two. It could happen to you guys. It's not easy, man. It's not easy. So I'll leave you guys with that. But I'll tell you what, I feel very confident the final quarter of this year, we're going to absolutely crush the UFC picks and our UFC targets. Okay, DWCS is over now. If you guys want to roll with me, I'm telling you, now is the time to hop on, man. Shoot me an email, DM me on Instagram, and I'll give you further information. But I got a couple options. If you guys sign up through a sports book that I use, I'll get you an added bonus to your account, and I will give you an entire month for free. If you guys do that, I will give you an entire month of my picks for free. So if you guys are interested, reach out to me. If you're not, I still appreciate you guys so much for tuning into the show and showing any kind of support that you do. I hope you guys are all doing good out there. And a lot of you guys have been telling me to bring back the closing thoughts to my full card predictions for these UFC events. And maybe I'll bring them back. I don't know. Sometimes people were roasting me for doing them. Some people want them back. I don't know. I'm on the fence there. But I hope you guys are all doing well out there. Signing out. Teller.